Power corrupts, but what happens when you hand over the keys of a city to someone who was corrupt from day one? In Dolton, Illinois, a small suburb just 20 miles from Chicago, residents are living a nightmare under the iron fist of America's worst mayor. Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor, uses police as personal security, spends taxpayer money like it's her allowance, and responds to criticism by playing the race card in a town that's 90% African American. She has turned this community into her personal playground of corruption. The worst part? She's still in charge, while facing FBI investigations, civil rights violations, and countless lawsuits. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand how one manipulative sociopath managed to transform a struggling but hopeful community into ground zero for government abuse, and why the state of Illinois seems unwilling to stop her. Tiffany Henyard shows how easy it is for a sociopath to hijack democracy when voters choose symbolism over substance. In 2021, Dolton residents were so excited about electing their first black female mayor, they simply forgot to ask one crucial question. Was she qualified to lead? The answer? Not even close. Henyard claimed to have a business administration degree from Robert Morris University, Illinois. The thing is, investigators couldn't verify this claim. But hey, who needs qualifications when you can make history, right? This is what happens when people vote with their hearts instead of their heads, when they're so focused on checking diversity boxes they forget to check candidates' credentials. Let me take you back to the beginning of this nightmare. In 2021, when Tiffany Henyard first conned her way into power, the warning signs were there from the start. But Dolton's residents were too blinded by the historic nature of her candidacy to see them. At 37 years old, Henyard marketed herself as a fresh face who would bring change to this struggling community of 22,000 people. And just like many political promises, it was all smoke and mirrors. Henyard ran on a platform promising change and unity. She even assembled what she called her dream team of trustees. She knew that running alongside respected community members would give her campaign legitimacy, and it worked. She won with an overwhelming 82% of the vote. But that dream quickly turned into a nightmare. Within months, these same trustees were filing lawsuits against her, accusing her of conflicts of interest and financial mismanagement. Henyard's mask started slipping before she even took office. Her inauguration ceremony, yes, an inauguration ceremony for the mayor of a small town, cost taxpayers $20,000. In Dolton, where the median household income is well below the national average, that's not just excessive, it's obscene. From day one, Henyard showed her true colors. She plastered her face on billboards throughout the city, all paid for with public funds. She removed trustees' pictures from City Hall. When residents started asking questions about her spending, she simply turned off their microphones during public meetings. That dream team turned against her after witnessing her tyrannical behavior firsthand. Jason House, one of her earliest supporters, now says supporting Henyard was the biggest mistake of his political career. That's what happens when you elect someone based on identity politics rather than qualifications and character. And instead of addressing these concerns, Henyard's response was to literally lock the trustees out of their offices. Yes, you heard that right. But how much money are we talking about? To put it simply, when Henyard took office, Dolton's general fund had a positive balance of $5.6 million. Fast forward to 2025, and the town is drowning in $7 million of debt. Businesses are fleeing, police resources are being diverted to her personal security detail, and the city can't even pay its bills. But while the city crumbles, Henyard lives like a queen. According to Fox 32 Chicago's investigative reporting, Henyard has redirected police resources to maintain a personal security force that has cost Dolton taxpayers approximately $1 million. Work records obtained through Freedom of Information requests revealed officers on her detail being paid for unconscionable amounts of overtime, with one officer logging an impossible 303 hours in a mere 2-week period. The misappropriation of public funds doesn't stop there. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was called in for a special investigation into Henyard's spending. 9 months of difficult digging uncovered disturbing patterns of unauthorized credit card usage, including multiple suspicious transactions. In one particularly egregious example, more than $43,000 in Amazon purchases were made on the village credit cards in just one day, despite the fact that the village of Dolton doesn't even maintain an Amazon account. This level of financial misconduct would be shocking in any context, but it's particularly reprehensible coming from an administration that has driven the village to the brink of bankruptcy. The money is a central issue in the corrupt politics of Henyard. She doesn't just waste it, she's created what can only be described as a personal fiefdom. She has effectively transformed Dolton into her personal dominion, exercising authority with complete disregard for legal constraints or oversight. Throughout the city, taxpayer-funded banners and billboards bearing her image dominate the landscape, creating what residents describe as a cult of personality more befitting an authoritarian regime than a suburban Illinois town. As one resident noted, while other municipalities might display banners celebrating local heroes or community achievements, in Dolton, citizens are confronted with their mayor's face at every turn. As if the intimidation around every corner wasn't enough, her employees have to live with the constant fear of one day losing their jobs. Despite a board resolution from October 2021 that clearly mandates board input and approval for any staffing changes, she has repeatedly bypassed this requirement. This has resulted in a pattern of unilateral decisions that have sparked multiple lawsuits. The most notable instance occurred in October 2023, when Henyard dismissed Police Chief Robert Collins without board approval. Collins later filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, claiming his firing was not only retaliatory but also executed in violation of legal procedures. But perhaps nothing better illustrates Henyard's moral bankruptcy than her conduct as a landlord while serving as mayor. A CBS 2 Chicago investigation revealed that she continued to collect Section 8 housing subsidies for a property that had been deemed uninhabitable due to severe mold contamination. The investigation documented extensive water damage and dangerous living conditions that forced the tenant to evacuate. Yet even after the property was officially declared unfit for human habitation, Henyard continued to accept government payments meant to provide safe housing for low-income residents. Now get ready, because this situation is almost too absurd to believe. While Henyard was pocketing government money for a property no one could even live in, she wasn't paying rent on her own home. Despite earning nearly $300,000 in taxpayer money from her 2 jobs, she and her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, still skipped out on their $2,400 monthly rent. The victim in this case? Janetta Hull, a former friend who had even worked on Henyard's campaign. Hull made the mistake of renting her 3-bedroom Dolton home to Henyard after receiving a late-night call from the mayor in 2021. Feeling pressured by the mayor's authority, Hull agreed to rent to Henyard and Woods. But when Hull was forced to raise the rent by $200 due to increasing property taxes, the couple simply stopped paying. Not content with merely defaulting on their rent, they changed the locks and garage door code to keep Hull from accessing her own property. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about her character, I don't know what will. This raises another question. If all of this is happening, why has no one done anything about it? Why is she still in the position? Well, the thing is that this corruption comes with a calculated strategy of deflecting accountability through the manipulation of racial identity. When confronted with evidence of misconduct or questioned about financial irregularities, Henyard invariably characterizes these legitimate concerns as racially motivated attacks against a black woman in power. But if you really think about it, that excuse isn't just insufficient, it's downright absurd. Remember, this is happening in Dolton, where 90% of the population is black. The trustees who have consistently questioned her financial decisions and attempted to implement oversight, predominantly black. The very community leaders who initially supported her historic election as the first black female mayor, again, predominantly African American. But according to Henyard, they're all just haters trying to bring down a successful black woman. This manipulation of racial identity for personal gain isn't just cynical, it's dangerous. It trivializes real racial discrimination and turns legitimate concerns about corruption into a false narrative about persecution. But is it really a matter of community? Well, with what I'm about to tell you, it becomes crystal clear that Henyard is not someone who supports her own people. In May 2023, Henyard took a group of 13 people to Las Vegas on what was supposed to be an economic development conference. During this trip, her assistant, Phenia Dukes, was allegedly assaulted by a village trustee, Andrew Holmes, after having drinks with him. The lawsuit states that Dukes blacked out and woke up in Holmes's hotel room with no memory of what had occurred. Even more shocking, according to the lawsuit, Holmes allegedly called another officer to boast about his exploits, even FaceTiming to show Dukes partially undressed and unconscious. When Dukes reported this incident to Henyard, her supposed mentor and the highest-ranking female official in Dolton, the response was chilling. Instead of supporting the victim or initiating an investigation, Henyard allegedly told Dukes that if the information became public, she would be ruined and all that she worked for lost. Days later, Dukes was placed on unpaid medical leave and subsequently fired, a clear message to anyone else who might consider speaking out against abuse of power in Henyard's administration. So, if Henyard would go to such lengths to suppress allegations of assault against one of her allies, what other crimes or misconduct might have been buried under her watch? And how can Illinois officials continue to stand idle while evidence of such egregious abuse of power continues to mount? Despite overwhelming evidence of misconduct, despite the FBI launching an investigation, despite former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot's damning report on Henyard's financial mismanagement, Governor J.B. Pritzker has basically shrugged his shoulders. His response? Well, we have Lori Lightfoot investigating, and the FBI is involved. Thanks for the leadership, Governor. But the super mayor isn't untouchable. In early 2024, the Illinois Attorney General ordered Henyard's charity to stop soliciting donations after it failed to file required financial reports. This wasn't just about missing paperwork. Investigations revealed that her nonprofit, Tiffany Henyard Cares, had been operating without proper registration while receiving substantial funding from township and village taxpayer money. When the charity finally responded to the Attorney General's office, it submitted incomplete filings that conspicuously lacked key financial records. Meanwhile, the practical consequences of Henyard's financial mismanagement are catching up with her carefully crafted image of power. In a development that perfectly captures the collapse of her administration, the very police vehicles used by her million-dollar security detail are now at risk of repossession because the village can't make payments to KS State Bank. When confronted about these unpaid bills, Henyard attempted to blame the village board trustees for refusing to authorize payments, a claim quickly debunked by trustee Jason House, who provided evidence that such payments had been approved months earlier. Henyard's political troubles began in December 2024, when her opponents found a way to challenge one of her well-paid positions. State Senator Napoleon Harris, acting as the Democratic Party committeeman, decided to hold a caucus instead of a primary election for the Thornton Township supervisor role, something that hadn't been done in decades. This move took Henyard by surprise. The party also introduced new rules saying that candidates for supervisor couldn't run for another position, forcing Henyard to choose between keeping her township or mayoral job. As expected, Henyard entered the caucus full of confidence, saying, "They can't beat me. If they could, they would have gone to the polls." But she was wrong. Harris easily won the Democratic nomination, while Henyard and her supporters complained about the process. Once the results were clear, she left quietly in an SUV without talking to reporters, a sharp contrast to her usual bold attitude. The mounting frustration with Henyard's regime reached a dangerous boiling point in January 2025, when years of suppressed anger and institutional breakdown erupted into physical violence at a Thornton Township meeting. The incident starkly illustrated how Henyard's administration has transformed routine government meetings into potential powder kegs of civil unrest. The catalyst for this particular confrontation came when community activist Jedediah Brown, a vocal critic of Henyard's administration, confronted her during the public comments portion of the meeting. What followed demonstrated the volatile mixture of personal relationships and public power that has characterized Henyard's tenure. Her boyfriend, Kamal Woods, whom she had installed as head of the township youth program, initiated a physical confrontation with Brown that devolved into a full-scale brawl. What made it even worse? Henyard herself, instead of trying to calm things down as the highest official in the room, actually ran right into the chaos. In all the madness, She lost a shoe and ended up on the floor, an image that really summed up how far civil governance had fallen under her leadership. Despite all this, the FBI investigation, the lawsuits, the financial disaster, the alleged cover-up of assault, Henyard is running for re-election in 2025. With the confidence of someone who's never faced consequences for their actions, she's comparing herself to President Trump and boldly predicting a landslide victory. It seems in Dolton, Illinois, justice moves slower than a mayor's ambition. The real question is, how many more institutions will she destroy before someone finally stops her?